And as always, I would like to thank you guys for joining me. Ask that you please add, follow, and check us out. Instagram, Facebook, Best Damn Podcast, Twitter, The Real Best Damn. And it's been a while since I've done one of these lives, so hopefully I'm not too rusty. Tonight we're going to be talking about the paradox of perception and basically how it's unraveling, right? How it's unraveling, and how we are entering into a new age or a new cycle, a shift in consciousness. I think, especially with like recent events, we've seen a change, in the way that, the collective consciousness is operating, I think, to say the least. A lot of people, and we'll use the presidential election just as kind of like the first little bit of evidence on that, and whether you like, Donald Trump or you don't, and I do want to go ahead and give you a heads up. I am in Cincinnati, Ohio, so if you hear like cars and traffic or backfiring from a piece of shit, it's because there's, it's a highly populated area, so, but like I was saying, we're seeing a major shift in consciousness. We're seeing, like a cycle come to a close. And any of you guys that do study astrology or the occult or, the esoteric arts, you guys will probably agree, that, we have or we are entering into the age of Aquarius, right? We're leaving that age of Pisces, which was an age of duality, right? Where we've seen a lot of that influence, be placed on religion, right? Mechanisms of control, government oversight, all of that, right? And now we're kind of leaving that, which is, to me, that's a good thing. And that's why you see the power of religion dying the way that it is, It's not a bad thing. It's actually us becoming unindoctrinated and more enlightened, into our own spiritual power, into our own spiritual power, into our own connectedness and our own unity, right, as a whole, as the universal spirit or universal consciousness, right, God spirit, whatever you want to call it, right, the one, the all. Many people, depending on, what school of thought or, you're looking into, especially with the Gnostics, they believe that the power of this world is run by a demiurge, right? An archonic spirit. And if we look at the word archon, the base means lord or control, right? And the governors of this reality, or the rulers of this reality, and we look at the word government, right? And how it's become the replacement for God, in every aspect of life, it has that archonic undertone, where it's telling us how to live. It's telling us what is truth, what is not, what is right, what is wrong, what is real, what is fake, dictating the reality to us, dictating our identities to us. And you've seen this major detachment from like our spiritual selves, throughout the age of Pisces, especially, in the last recent years, But now as we kind of go through this shift, you see things shaking up. I feel like one of the things that we've seen with the whole Trump MAGA movement, and remember that MAGA, the base word for that, it actually derived from the temple of Set, which is the temple of Satan, right? And MAGA means magus, which means magician, right? And you guys may remember before Trump actually ran for president. I mean, he ran back in 1988 as a third-party candidate. And what he actually did in that one was he undermined Pat Buchanan. You guys may remember that. Roger Stone actually ran his whole election team back then, which he did the first time around before he was fired. So when that happened, they actually smeared the third-party candidate because he was gaining ground, right? Breaking the two-party paradigm, okay? And many people, would, whether you like him or not, he did go to Fordham University. He is a Jesuit, so it's, it's either neither here nor there for a lot of you. But remember, when he did that, it was actually to break that, it was actually to keep in place that two-party paradigm, right? To not allow a third-party candidate to gain ground, because that's exactly what he was doing. He was stealing votes from the two-party system. So they came up with a smear campaign where they said he was with a prostitute and he had black socks on and shit like that. Some of you guys may remember this. Some of you guys may not. It depends on how old you are. But if you check this, you can see like it's historically true. Right, so that was the first time he ran. But then we seen, back, when his campaign against Hillary Clinton, he painted himself as this outsider of the two-party system, right? Like he wasn't one of the globalists, right? This was like the claim to it all, Never mind, him being funded and bankrolled by the Zionists and his affiliation with Israel and all of that. A lot of people tend to overlook that, especially people that consider themselves truthers or conspiracy theorists. Like a lot of people tend to overlook that, But you may remember before he ran, Maria Abramovich, she's one of the famous Satanists. She's an artist. She's the one that does all the spirit cooking and shit like that with Hillary Clinton. She talked about how if Donald Trump ever became president, that he was the Magus, he was the magician, that he would be the one to be able to shake up the collective consciousness in such a way that it would actually awaken the population, right? Now think about what's taken place over the last fucking 8 years, right? Since 2016. Probably the greatest mass awakening in at least modern history, right? Since, all the sunflower kids and shit in the 1960s. That was another, big time, which, we seen, Reagan, which, Roger Stone and Trump, they have a lot of associations with, Nixon, as well as Ronald Reagan. That's where the Make America Great Again actually came from, was Reagan, right? It ain't an original slogan at all. So, that's depending on how you believe, or, that could matter, that could not for some of you guys. But, Reagan was also an actor, which we know that Trump has been on television and all of that. You guys remember, like, you're fired and all that shit. That was the beginning of that presentation of them presenting him as a powerful force, right? And that's where a lot of people get the concept, which is a dualistic concept of red tie, blue tie Trump, right? Whenever he's like on his war front, right, and he's doing powerful things, he wears the red tie, right? Because red and blue are the colors of the duality, right? So that's the solar and the lunar right there. The red and blue pillar, or the black and white pillar, or, the sun and the moon pillar, right? And that's how, this duality is kind of ran. It's these two opposing sides, or this illusion of two opposing sides, that we see in reality. It's God and the devil, right? Or Jesus and the devil, or, the sun and the moon, black and white. And, whenever you look at 11/11, which was a big thing, especially back, it's been way before 2016, but especially back in 2016 when you seen like the mass awakening movement, a lot of people would stamp their shit with 11/11. What 11/11 actually means, it correlates to the Masonic checkerboard floor, which means black and white. So when you take black and numerology, right, and you add up the numbers, it's 11, and white numerology, it's 11. So 11/11 is black and white. It means a duality. It's, the inverse, or the opposing sides. And it's always about that, right? These two pillars, these opposites. That was the whole age of Pisces and these two fish, right? They had one fish. If you look at the sigil for, the Piscean age, it's one fish above and then one fish below, right? And a lot of people associate Christ or Jesus with the fish as well, because, that was the coming of, that particular religious figure, which we've had many of them. If we look at Mithraism and all these other religions way before Christ, it was the same exact story, right? A virgin birth and all this, because ultimately what that story is, it's about you, it's about you. Christ is a level of consciousness that's actually above the physical paradigm or the physical world, So like I was saying, Maria Abramovich, right? She talks about, and this is a well-known Satanist, right? The one famous for the spirit cooking and all of that. So she talks about how Trump was the great magus, the great magician, and that his presence alone would be enough to shake the collective consciousness in such a way that they would have no choice but to be awakened, right? Now I want you to kind of look back. I want you to look back, and here's what's sad about politics and religion. And I hate this for a lot of you guys, I do. Because when it comes to politics and religion, people just can't have an open mind. They're too emotionally attached to it. And see, and you got to understand that this is how mind control works. Whenever we are triggered emotionally, the logical side of our brain cuts off, right? That's what trauma-based mind control and all that shit is really all about. It's to invoke or trigger an emotional response. That's why you've seen a lot of, especially with the first time around with Trump, them using words like racist. That's called Neurolinguistic Programming. Neurolinguistic Programming is when you use certain words that have a negative connotation, right, in the collective conscious, and what it does is evoke an emotional response, right? So if I use a word like racist, everybody hears that word, and we automatically have this feeling of distaste, right? Because nobody likes a fucking racist. Nobody, So when we hear somebody label one of these things, it's automatically predisposing us to a negative disposition towards that person, that character, And I've talked about this a lot, how character assassination works, how character assassination works, and controlled opposition, and how the best way to control the opposition is to lead it. And I feel like that's exactly what, Trump has been, is controlled opposition. And we've seen after 2016, until Joe Biden came into office and all of that, him being used as that figurehead to attack all of the groups that fell under the umbrella of Trump, right? So, just for instance, right, the alt-right, conspiracy theorists, Christians, everybody that fell under that umbrella then became a target, They became a target. And everything that he did, right, as nasty as he was, or as classless as he was, and we know that they painted him, this way intentionally, right? And what it actually did was, it either done one of two things. It polarized people, right? So you were either polarized in one of two directions, right? You were either polarized, A, to hate the motherfucker, right? You hated him. You thought he was just the worst, the most terrible, trashy human being on the face of the earth, right? Because you were polarized to do that by that neuro-linguistic programming, all these negative connotations that they attached to him. Or B, right, because everyone was attacking him, you became a staunch defender of him, right? You loved the motherfucker. You're like, oh my God, without him, we can't do it, right? America's doomed without him, right? So you became one of the two, most of people. I mean, I'm not going to say all of you guys did, because I don't know, individually how you feel about it. But I'm going to say the majority of people did, right? They fell for that, And it's, and a lot of people want to get into their egos, when it comes to these kind of things, and be like, think it's attacking their intelligence and shit like that by saying we got duped, and it's not at all. It has nothing to do with intelligence, right? These are the most, advanced tactics of psychological warfare that you could ever fucking imagine, and they have been harnessed and refined for, probably the last, at least the last 60, 70 years, right, by the United States government and other governments of the world. So, I mean, it's you're no slouch if you got burnt by this. You know what I mean? At all, actually. You're no slouch at all if you got burnt by this. I mean, every one of us has in some way, shape, form, or facet. We've all been blistered by, the mind control and the propaganda and all this. And you can say that the United States don't do that, and that would just be untrue. Every government of the world has a form of propaganda, right? And we call it patriotism and all of that. What do you think that is? What do you think that is? Where they're pushing all that, through the media, right? Which is a medium, to try to get you to support, their pro-war movements, their laws, And a lot of these oversights and laws are actually detrimental to your fucking freedoms, right? And we can see that as evident by, the war on drugs, right? Still to this day, there are many people, especially minorities, that are just, they're fucking slammed by the war on drugs that happened decades and decades ago. They'll never see the light of day, because of these mandatory minimums that were imposed because of the war on drugs, right? Same thing with the war on terror. You guys see all of the Arab and Muslim Americans and all of those people that were just smoked by this. Good people that were trying to migrate to the United States because they wanted opportunity, and then they got here and they got treated like fucking criminals. You know what I mean? And they were probably better than a lot of the Americans that already lived here, truth be told. But this has been different forms of targeting, and I was actually talking about this with my girlfriend's mother about 9/11 and shit like that actually took place. And the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was a compilation of terrible, terrible laws and acts and shit that could not be passed on their own volition. They were just so un-American and unpatriotic and illegal that none of them, were able to be passed. They were just a whole compilation of that kind of shit. And then after 9/11, right, and the terror attacks, then all of a sudden, they put it all in one big giant fucking package, right, called the Patriot Act. And, that's what happened, And then we've seen the NSA and all of that, and they were able to illegally surveil Americans. They didn't have to tell them. And then, just to kind of go and show you that Trump is part of the machine, if you don't remember, the reauthorization, the 2020 reauthorization of the Patriot Act, that was Donald Trump, right? Just saying. So, and that even made it worse, right, with the FISA and all that shit. So, it got cranked up a notch. They updated that shit. So, and a lot of people, they don't understand. And I've done a lot of videos, and you guys can, I haven't done a video in a while, and I'll tell you why. It's just been because I've been having health issues. Not to get like really deep and all that, but just been seeing a specialist. They think I have bladder cancer and all kinds of weird shit. So I've just been not too hot physically, so I haven't really done anything. But I'm trying to do some shit again and just basically try to get back into my life, really. Is this the Diddy Party? I guess. I don't know. The Diddy shit is just a distraction, just to be honest. Who gives a fuck about Diddy? I mean, honestly, that's what they do with entertainers. Most of the entertainers are distractions. I could give a fuck less about a guy who dances around and makes music. Honestly, he's got no real influence on this world whatsoever. Like, honestly, he don't make laws. He don't, he doesn't decide anything, any policies or nothing. So, like, just the truth, all of that's distraction. Who cares if he has gay sex? It's not my business, and all of those artists and shit that went along with it, that's on them, that's on them, and that's the proverbial Faustian bargain, right? Selling your soul, where you compromise your morals or values in order to, have some sort of gain, personal gain, selfish gain. And we do that in a multitude of ways, especially in society today, where, and a lot of people believe the 40-hour work week is the prime example of that, right? Where we sell our dreams, our passions, and not everybody. A lot of people do what they love. They're passionate about it and they love it, and that's amazing, if you're lucky enough to be like that, but a lot of people also have given up on their dreams for that 40-hour work week and that paycheck, so, and I'm not knocking you if you got a family to take care of or whatever, right? It is what it is, and the whole 40-hour work week, that's the maximum amount of hours that they can make a person work over like a 20-30 year period before they physically, mentally, and emotionally give out, like, so these are very tactical numbers, so just saying. I mean, that's neither here nor there, it's a whole nother subject, and people are waking up to this shit, right? They're waking up to this shit. And like I was saying with the Trump thing, you've seen a lot of the religious leaders and shit like that, especially the evangelicals and a lot of the Zionists and shit like that, paint him as a messenger of God or sent by God or whatever, right? And if you look at a lot of or even be compared to biblical figures such as Cyrus, right? Cyrus, he was minted on a gold coin. You remember back in 2016, Trump had his own gold coin, right? And he was the outsider who became the king of Babylon, right? And Babylon fell in his 4th year. And if you kind of remember, if you can think back, I know a lot of people don't have the ability to remember, past events like that anymore because of, all of the mind control and shit like that. But if you remember back, in that 4th year, when he done the transference of power to Joe Biden, there was 30,000 National Guard troops that occupied the nation's capital. They actually shut down the entire capital and the federal government for that transference of power, right? And if you also remember, they ran an exercise in that year, 2020. It's called the Transition Integration Project. And in that project, they ran 3 different scenarios of a contested election. And in 2 out of the 3 scenarios, Joe Biden won, so I'm just saying. And anytime we see, all of the events, whether they're school bangs or, terror attacks or whatever, right? Whatever, we always see evidence of crisis acting, exercises. Even 9/11, there were exercises being ran that day, where fighter jets were fucking deployed because of an attack on those towers in the Pentagon and all of that, so it's like, you can take that or leave it, depending on what you believe, but I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. And when I see something happen over and over and over and over and over, it becomes evidence, right? It becomes evidence is what it is. And the one thing that is evident is that, most of the people, the masses, they don't have a clue, as to what's truly going on, in our world today. And like I said earlier, and I'll get back to that. Excuse me. Like I said earlier, about the Maria Abramovich thing, right? And how she called Trump, the Magus, right? The magician. And that only he would, basically be a wild card, in all of this enough to be able to shake up the collective consciousness and actually, trigger a mass awakening, and then I want you to kind of look what has happened, in the last 8 years, and we went from him being, completely maligned and attacked to now he spanked Kamala Harris in that election. He spanked her. They say after it's all said and done, he'll have about 315 on the Electoral College, and he busted her ass on the popular vote, and this is probably the most hated figure in America back in 2016, when you look at what all took place. Now, why did that happen? Why did that happen? And this is what I'm talking about, the unraveling of the paradox, that we've all kind of been fed now. So now you see this, and this is where I think it kind of becomes good, and you can have your beliefs or opinions about people like Maria Abramovich and all of these people, right? Whether but they do have a very deep degree of knowledge, and occult and esoteric understanding, right? These are people that practice on a fucking level that's not even comprehensible to most people, right? When it comes to spirituality and magic, and that's what, and this class of people, what we call, the elites and all that, they're indoctrinated into this shit. How you're indoctrinated into the little poverty version, right? The exoteric, the external understanding of all the religions, they're indoctrinated into the esoteric, right? They grow up that way. That's why all of them, use the power of numbers and words and all of this, right? And I've used this as an example before, like the number 28, right? Vladimir Putin, born 28th, married the 28th, Elon Musk, the 28th, right? Because that 28 is a fucking, it's a number of money, right? And they know this, they understand this, they were born and bred for this shit, So whereas we are taught that this is conspiracy, that this is evil, that this is all of these things, they're taught the total fucking opposite, and they understand the real truth of this. So when you hear them speaking about these things way ahead of time, right, decades before it actually happens, and then it comes to fruition, it's like, maybe you should start listening, Maybe it's not all bullshit. Maybe it's not all conspiracy. We know that actually conspiracy theory was a weaponized term from the Warren Commission after the JFK assassination, because everybody knew the motherfucker got shot from two different directions, and Lee Harvey Oswald and all of this, man, that was just a patsy. That was one of the first targeted individuals. And a lot of people that watch this channel and channels like it, know exactly what I'm talking about when it, targeted individual, because it's happened to a lot of you. For opening your mouth too much, whether you create content or you're a doctor that, does holistic healing, or you're a lawyer that defended the wrong fucking person, it doesn't matter, They don't want this to be, and that's why they keep it in these mystery schools and secret societies and shit like that. They don't want this to be readily available to everyone, They don't. And the reason being because it wouldn't work, and you see what's happening now, this kind of mass awakening, this mass shift in consciousness, where it's like people, and I think the election is a good example of that, or at least, and it's like whether you believe your vote counts or not, we'll pretend it does for today. We look at the election and look at the results, where, the whole liberal mindset, where they try to tell you what genders are what, and, all of this shit, these weird, backwards, inverse ideologies, that go against fucking reality and nature itself, right? And it's been pushed on us for at least the last decade or more. It's been longer, but, heavily over the last decade. They've tried to indoctrinate our children into this shit. They've destroyed the nuclear family. They've tried to make the fucking government the parental, unit. You guys remember, I've done videos on it, the 10-point plan of the New World Order by Alice Bailey, right? Where they talk about this. It's making government God, right? And think about the word government, right? Govern, which means to lord over, to control, which derives from the word archon, right? We talked about that. And it's mentality, your mind, right? So the whole word of government means to control your fucking mind. Why? Because your mind is the basis of your reality, right? Imagination is God, right? That is the spirit. It's our imagination, so it all starts with a thought, and that's why we've seen, so many people, it's been this massive shift, or this massive awakening, where people are no longer, they're, and if the vote says anything, it's them deciding like, hey, fuck you guys, you're not going to tell us, what, something against biology. You're not going to tell us, how to make our country safe. You're not going to tell us, you're not going to tell us what is real and what is fake. Fuck your fact checkers, all of this shit. And we've seen, and I've suffered myself from, the last 4 years, especially on, the content creation front, with all of the fact checkers and shit like that. I've been demonetized on every fucking platform. I've had many channels and shit deleted, and that's just not me. That's a billion other fucking people too, right? A billion other people, where it's like anything that we say that goes against, you know, what they say is the status quo, or, you know, what they say is real. You know, whether it is or not, you know, it's neither here nor there, you know. And we're having this force fed to us. And I think that's kind of what, you know, Maria Abramovich was actually talking about, where we would see this polarizing shakeup, where this dualistic reality would kind of implode on itself, right? Where the system tries to gain so much fucking oversight and control. And see, and these are the laws of polarity. If you guys understand the Hermetic principles, which I've also talked about a lot on this channel, you know, these are the laws of polarity, right? So if I force you to do something, right, and I try to impose my will upon you, right, I try to impose my will upon you, and this is why you see, you know, the powers that be, or, you know, the elite ruling class, whatever you want to call them, get you to do things a lot of times on your own volition, right? They'll tell you what they're doing as they're doing it. That way you're consciously agreeing to it, right? You're going along with it. You're choosing it for yourself. Because when you do try to force somebody, it actually has the opposite reaction, right? So the more I try to force you, right, to conform, the more I try to silence you, oppress you, and censor you. You may give in at first, and you've seen that, right? You've seen a mass capitulation, everybody just rolling the fuck over, and, you know, bitching up to the system there for a minute, right? But then as you've seen, you know, one or two voices pop up, and then more and more people, right? You know, there became like this kind of power in numbers thing, and we've seen, you know, a trickle-down effect, the 100th monkey syndrome, right? Where it's like, once one person got it, we all started to get it, right? Because we're all connected consciously, you know? And the more you try to force somebody, you actually get the opposite reaction from that, you know? And those are the laws of polarity, you know? Those are the laws of polarity. So if I force censorship on you, if I, you know, force this, you know, this false version of reality, this false paradigm on you, right? What it's actually going to do is put so much pressure on you, it's going to force you in the opposite direction, you know? And that's what we see, this mass shift in consciousness, going away from what they were actually trying to get us to do. It's like, oh, they want to create an anti-American sentiment. Well, what'd it do? It created, you know, mass patriotism, you know? They want to create this nihilistic, fucking atheistic, materialistic version of society. What has it done? You know, you see more spiritual people now than probably ever before. You see more people that study metaphysics, the occult, right? Just have this larger awareness and understanding, you know, and are tuned in and tapped into consciousness than probably ever before, you know? The more they've tried to silence us, the more that people now speak out. You can see this, it's a common thing now. You know, it isn't just a couple of content creators like, you know, in 2016, it's everybody. Now everybody don't give a fuck, you know? We're all saying what we want to say. We're all doing what we want to do, you know? And you've seen, especially with, you know, and I think, you know, and I've talked about this, the war on drugs, the war on terror, well, the war on COVID was the last round of something like that, in my opinion, you know, where they forced everybody in their homes. They shut down the economy. You know, we've seen the mass censorship on them telling us, you know, what was real and what was not, and all of this, you know, and it's like, I think that's where people kind of like drew the line, you know, where it's like people eventually said, enough is enough. And speaking of enough is enough, if you've ever seen the Illuminati card game, you know, I believe it's 1991, Stephen Jackson, who is allegedly the great-great-great-grandson of Nostradamus, right? There is a card for Donald Trump, you know, and it's got him screaming on it, and it says enough is enough, and it says any time, any place our snipers can get you, you know. And then what did we see in this round of the election, right? Him getting shot in the fucking ear, you know, the assassination attempt, you know, and whether that was real or staged or whatever, you know, I'm not here to tell you either way. What it was that had that polarizing effect, right? You know, people are like, oh, and now you're going to go after our dude, you know, right? This guy's going against the machine in a lot of people's opinion, and you're going to try to kill him now, you know? And if you guys, depending on what you believe in the Bible, the Antichrist takes a fatal wound to the head and lives. You've seen him being compared to King Cyrus, the outsider who became the king of Babylon. Babylon fell in the 4th year. I told you, the 30,000 National Guard troops occupying the nation's capital during the transition of power, right? Or Nebuchadnezzar, right, who was proud and gets cut down, right? The king who was not, but is yet to come. I mean, depending on how you look at it, right? He was, and then he was not, and now he is to come, right? I'm just saying, depending on how you look at it, a lot of people, have compared him to the Antichrist, And remember, the Antichrist deceives everybody. He deceives everybody. I'm not here to tell you that he is or he isn't. I don't fucking know. I'm just here to say, maybe we should open our minds and consider. And see, like I said, when it comes to politics, you cannot, in religion, you cannot talk about these things because people, they can't handle it. They just can't fucking handle it. It's just the truth. You start talking about religion, they become so offended and so emotional, over that discussion that they can no longer ingest it. It's fucking overload. Emotional. They get mad. They shut it off. They're not able to be open-minded about these kind of things. Same thing with politics. They'll think, oh well, this guy is just a fucking wacky liberal, not knowing that I voted for the guy. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted him to win. I didn't want Kamala Harris. I believe they're two wings to the same bird. But and a lot of people talked about how Kamala would be the candidate this time around. If you looked at I Pet Goat and all of this, there was a lot of that being telegraphed, and Biden, he got duped, he got suckered, they took him out of there and replaced him with her, and they tried to, and if you remember, she was voted the most liberal fucking person on that side of the aisle, before she was ever into office, so I know they tried to paint her otherwise during the campaign. It doesn't matter, I believe we need a balance of both. There are some socialist policies that are actually good for the country. We should have fucking health care for everybody. That's every nation in the world does. We're the richest nation in the world. That should be a thing. Education should be free all the way up to university. Should be free for everybody. These are just, there should be, I believe in universal basic income also, and as we see the rise of AI, and with things like Social Security and shit like that, our elderly, they should get the same, minimum wage that, they should get that for their living. We should take care of our elderly. We should take care of our children. We should take care of our disabled. We should do a lot more. And whether people agree or disagree is neither here nor there. But I just believe when you're this big of a nation, and you're sending, some billions, to fucking Ukraine, and you could solve homelessness, with a third of that money, you got a fucking problem. You got a fucking problem. And that's just how I believe. Hey, I do want to say thank you. Yeah, they do want... Yeah, Claudette, I agree. And I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. Claudette, Dark V, Marcus99. What is it? Fun Kintelecki, I think is the name. NY Debs, Becca Loves Jesus, Zero Infinity Live, Chrono Crucified BDP, Graceful Heart, Bruce. Thank you guys. I appreciate everybody in the chat. So everybody for taking the time to watch. Make sure you guys are hitting the thumbs up. If you guys are watching here on... Yeah, it has been a long time. I said it a little bit earlier. I've just been sick, man. So that's kind of why, just doing that. So, but I'm gonna try to do some content too. If you guys want to say some prayers and all that good stuff, I'm not accepting it or anything, because I do believe in the power of manifestation, but I am like currently, seeing a urologist for potential bladder cancer. So hopefully that's not a thing. I don't believe it is. I'm not gonna accept that in my mind. But yeah, so that's kind of like just been, and plus, I got a girlfriend now and all that stuff. So I've just been doing a lot of that. Yeah, I'm glad to be back too. I am. I really enjoy doing this stuff. And I love discussing these things. I love just kicking these ideas around. It's kind of like my version of church. I don't believe in organized religion or any of that stuff. So, I prefer to do it this way. It's really therapeutic for me to talk about these things. And it's like, honestly, in like your normal life, and you guys would probably agree with this, in your normal life, how many fucking people do you know that you can even talk about these kind of ideas with and not be looked at like you're absolutely fucking insane? Even here on YouTube, a lot of time I'll get a fucking big ass chat of people just calling me crazy and all kinds of shit, which I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah, I will heal. I will. No doubt I will. I agree. Being sick is a temptation to believe that you're other than how you're created. I agree with that. I agree. And if you think about sickness, it's dis-ease, right? Dis-ease. So dis-ease is, it's distortion in your chakras and your aura, right? It's distortion in that. So it's meaning you're out of alignment somewhere, within your body, and that can happen, guys. I mean, honestly, that could happen to any of us. It really can, especially like, the way that, society is, and depending on what type of life you live, it's very fucking easy, to get out of alignment. It really is. And that's why I'm like, okay, I need to like get back to the things that I really do that keep me in alignment, honestly. And I would love to, I'd love to, hear you guys' thoughts too in the chat. You guys are more than welcome to comment. Well, I mean, hey Tyler, it's nice to see all of you guys. Like I was saying though, when we kind of like looked at all this, and I hate to kind of like harp on the election stuff and the Trump stuff and all of that, but it's just been, to me, this is like, it's evidence of us seeing like this major shift, in consciousness. And I mean, there's way more, that goes along with that, and I hate to tell people, if you're like still holding your breath for like arrest and shit like that, of, all of these, Epstein lists and shit like that, it's never gonna happen, guys. That's never gonna happen. That's never gonna happen. That's what all that really was. When they were like unveiling that through, QAnon was a psyop, we all know that. And when they were like unveiling all that through the media and, these different outlets, that's as close as you'll ever get to closure when it comes to that shit right there. The whole pedophilia and all that, circus and, all that. So, they did that. And it's basically, that's like the Roman Circus. How do I explain this? It basically expunges them from all guilt when they do shit like that, right? So a lot of times it's called purging the collective consciousness by telling you things. By telling you, they're like kind of like purifying them. Okay, that was weird. My camera just went out. That was weird. But that was weird. And I'm talking about this now, and then all of a sudden, the camera just kicks off. I don't know if you guys seen that or not. But by telling you that, you know, by telling you these things, they're purging themselves of guilt. They are, you know, they're purging you too, right? So because we're all connected, hold on. Sorry guys. I live in the city, so my bad. It is loud sometimes. I do apologize, but I like to come outside and do the videos now. I like it, so sorry. Do vids inside. I will. I'll start doing them inside again. I actually just rearranged my house and put my computer and shit in another room. So I am setting up for it, by the way. But what I was saying though, you know, and this is like, you know, just like the Roman Circus and shit in the past, you see variations of this now today, right? And that's what they're doing when they're putting all that shit out there for, you know, everybody. They're actually like expunging themselves of guilt. You know, that's what they believe. You know, a lot of times, you know, especially in witchcraft, one of the best tactics in witchcraft is to get you to do it to yourself, right? So let's just say hypothetically, and I'm not, but let's just say hypothetically, you know, I was trying to hex you or curse you or, you know, get a hold of your brain, right, and do something terrible to you, right? One of the best ways I would do that is actually telling you in different ways of what I was doing, you know, whether that's through images, it's music, videos, whatever, right? Text message, I mean, it can come through a multitude of different medias, right? It doesn't matter how it comes, you know, and I can even, and a lot of times, because this is how kind of consciousness works, when you're operating on an extremely high level of consciousness, and a lot of like the yogis and you know, gurus and shit in ages of the past, they were able to tap into this too. But it's not just for good people. You know, you guys heard of hemispheric synchronization or the hypnagogic dream state and shit like that. These are different ways to amp yourself up, to get both hemispheres of your brain working together, right? You can get your third eye to open without being a good person. You know, I'm just saying, you know, it's really all about sound and vibration and shit like that. And that's why you see a lot of, you know, meditations and shit, their own, right? Because that vibration, right? But when you can get that part of you accessed, right, you then have the ability to not only tap into the mask, right, which is the lower aspect, it's you. So my mask is John, right? That's my persona, right? That's who I think I am. That's the individual fragment, right, that I believe I am, but I'm actually not. I'm actually God, right? And so are you. We all are, right? And once we have that ability to tap into that real high state of consciousness, we can actually hear it. We can hear ourselves in everybody and see ourselves in everybody, you know? And a lot of people can hold that state for long periods of time, you know? Yogis and shit like that, right? Gurus. And they don't use it for evil. But see, a lot of people that practice magic and witchcraft can also access it, right? And when they get into that, they can. So when you tap into that, you begin to have the ability to, it's kind of like a double speak, where things take on two meanings. And that's why Christ in the Bible, if you notice, he spoke in parables, and he'd say shit like, truly, truly, I say unto you, or verily, verily, I say unto you. The reason he was saying that is because he was saying the same thing frontwards and backwards, right? So even though he's in this like super high state of consciousness, he's trying to tell you, like, there's no deception in what I'm saying, right? There's no inverse meaning in what I'm saying. The same thing I'm saying to you frontwards is the same thing it means backwards. I have no hidden meaning in this, right? This is just truth, right? This is just truth, right? No deception, no guile in what I'm saying. Truly, truly, I say unto you. Verily, verily, I say unto you. He's saying it both ways. This is true, right? Now, not the same with a lot of other people, right? So when they're saying things, a lot of times it has two different meanings, right? And you'll see this with, you know, kind of like a double speak. or they're saying one thing to you and it sounds one way, so you're interpreting it as one thing being said, right? You know, you believe they're saying whatever, right? But actually on the inverse, they're saying something totally different, you know. And they can speak in such a way, and we see this a lot with advertising. We see this a lot with you know, TV and, you know, radio and the internet, you know. And this is, you know, we're talking about neurolinguistic programming, all of this, right? And it has this ability to kind of speak to both levels of consciousness, you know. And you, so weird, but you know, by agreeing to a lot of this, accepting and ingesting a lot of this, right, you're going along with a lot of the things that they're, you know, they're pushing on you, you know. And a lot of people believe, which is a lie, you know, a lot of people believe the only way to, like, overcome this world, you know, is, like, selling their soul and shit like that. And I promise you it's not true, you know. That's a deception. That's a trick, you know, a trick and a half, you know, like, but a lot of people go along with it. They think, oh, well, the God of this world. Sorry, that's not true. There is no, it's not the God of this world, you know. That's an entity that has put itself in a position to try and, like, ingest all of the information, but it can't happen, right? It's impossible. And because it has that ego, that distorted aspect of it, you know, it'll never truly be God. It, you know, you can't say a created being can't be the creator, you know. And it's like, and a lot of people fall for it because so many people have given themselves over, you know, to that entity. I'm not saying it's not powerful. It is, you know, it's very powerful, and it can deceive a lot of people, you know. But if you've ever noticed, those that are really, really tuned in to, you know, Christ or God or the Creator or whatever, right? They're always attacked and sometimes even destroyed by this entity. And why is that? Because they have access to a different level of awareness, right? So this thing has all of the information, right? The ability to kind of, like, take in all this information, which has created this false paradigm or this simulation, right, that we kind of live in now. You know, and by doing that, it's, you know, it's channeling all of that information. It's got all of that, right? So it seems like it's the master of reality. But the truth is, you know, we actually reside somewhere outside of this. And if we can tap into that, you know, this reality can't hold all of it, you know. And when we're tapped into that, we become unpredictable, you know. So it can predict the day-to-day, the physical world, you know, and it can predict it in such a way that it seems like God, you know. You'll believe, like, fuck, this, you know, this entity is God, you know. But it's not. It's not. When you tap into that awareness, when you tap into that state of consciousness, that high fucking, you know, state of consciousness, then you begin to be attacked. And that's why, you know, Christ said, you know, they did it to me first, right? You know, they hated me first. And the reason being, you know, is because once you're actually tuned into the true God, you know, true God self, which, you know, it's, you know, there's no name that can encompass it, you know, nothing like that. No matter what we want to put on it, you know, in our, you know, our limited human state, you know, our human form, you know. It's like you literally think that a few guttural sounds, you know, can encompass God. It's crazy, you know. Like whether you're calling it fucking Yahweh or whatever, right? You think that can encompass the creator of all things? Those two guttural sounds that you make, Yahweh? No, right? No. That's and what we know, you know, a lot about consciousness is it actually stems from thought, right? And I told you imagination a lot earlier in the video. You know, that's actually that creative spirit, you know, is imagination. And think about imagination, you know, and I want you to truly think about imagination. Like, there's no limit to imagination. You know, I sound ridiculous? Well, maybe it's because you just don't understand. Now you sound ridiculous, right? And you sound confused. Maybe you sound confused. I'm not confused at all. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And I know that your books, written by men, don't have the ability to encompass the creator of all things. You know? Sorry. And if you take Christianity and you rearrange the letters, it's actually an anagram for Antichrist. Isn't that weird? You know? And then you even look into the Bible, right? What's it say about that particular religion? Right? What would you do? Lord, didn't we cast out demons in your name? Right? And he says, get away from me. Right? Flee from me, you evildoers. I never knew you. Right? I never knew you. Why is that? Why didn't he know you? You know? It's because it was actually within you the whole time. You know, and that was the message of Christ, was, you know, that it resided within each and every one of us. That's why he said, I'm in the Father, he is in me, you know, and I'm in you, and all this, right? You know, and a lot of people want to thump that book, which isn't even, you know, the Bible. It's not a Christian book at all. That actually comes mainly from Sumerians and Akkadians, right? And all of that. Ancient Babylon, right? What you see in the, you know, a lot in that book, they talk about Babylon and how evil it was, but it actually came from that time, you know, the Canaanites and all of that. You know, that's why you have, you know, Moloch and all of this, right? The angry, wrathful, vengeful God and all of that, you know. You know, but a lot of people don't know that. They don't understand, you know, history, his story, you know, and where a lot of these texts and books derive from. You know, the story of Noah actually comes from Sudra, right? It's like, when you don't know those things, it's real easy to be arrogant about it and egotistical about it and talk like you do. You know, it is. You know, when you understand that these come from older text, way older text, the actual oldest, right? And that a lot of the languages that we have derive from other languages. And when we start to look at, you know, the Hebraic and the Greek meanings and the etymology of these words, they don't mean anything of what, you know, our modern day religions have indoctrinated us into believing, right? And I said this quite a bit. If we look in Genesis, right? Just in Genesis alone. And we were made in the image of the Elohim, right? Elohim means supreme magistrates, right? Which is angels, messengers, watchers, stars, the luminaries, right? The heavenly host. And what is God? He is the Lord of hosts, right? And we're made in the image. An image means a phantom, a projection, or an illusion, right? So when you hear things like a simulation theory, you know, or the Ark of the Covenant, right? Things like that. What is the covenant? It's represented by the rainbow, right? That is like the sign, you know, of the covenant with God. And what is a rainbow? There's 7 colors, 7 principles representing the 7 days of the week, right? Representing the 7 main planets, right? The 7 sons of Satan, right? Also, right? See, people don't understand these things, so they don't understand where it actually derives from. An arc actually represents the firmament, which is a prism, right? It is the collective third eye for the entirety of the collective consciousness. Outer space represents the outer psyche, right, of human consciousness. So it's outside of our collective psyche, right? And that firmament acts as a lens or a prism, right? Where that light, right, from those 7 main chakras, which correlate to the 7 chakras as well, the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 planets, which rule the 7 days of the week, right? They are filtered or separated, right, or divided, right, as they go through that prism or that arc. That's what the Ark of the Covenant actually is. See, people don't understand this. You know, it's called soul luminescence, or star in a jar. It's the scientific principle of how we're actually created, you know. So we do derive from the stars. We are the fallen angels, actually. So, you know, we are God. We are. You know, and it's our imagination that can create anything. You know, we can decide what our lives are like or what they're not. And if you want to limit yourself to, you know, whatever you've been indoctrinated into believing, you know, perception is reality. That's your limited little reality then. You can have that. You know, you can have that. You can be as weak and minuscule and as unimportant as you want to be. You know, but also you can, and God says, I give all things to you, right? So, I mean, if he gives all things to us, and, you know, all things are possible, and he who believes, right, through faith, right, belief, right, in these things, you know, that would mean, like, whatever we believe is what's real, right? And we can do all things through that belief, because it is our imagination, right? And when we look at, like, thought and all of this, right, you know, it's thought, you know, because that is consciousness. The ability to communicate with ourselves, it comes from language, right? That's why in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, right? We're actually communicating with ourselves when we think. You know, we're talking to ourselves, right? From one spark to another, you know. The veil of forgetfulness is just the illusion of separation, is all it is. You know, it's the illusion that you are an individual. You're not. And that's where, you know, if we look at like the Bhagavad Gita and all these different spiritual texts that talk about reincarnation isn't you coming back in multiple lives, actually. It's you are part of one infinite flow of life, dude. You know, so when you die, and think about it, before you were alive, I want you to kind of remember, because you can't. I want you to remember what you were before you were here. You can't, can you? You can't. Why is that? Why can't you remember? Because you were part of that infinite flow. Right? And that's what you'll go back to. That's what reincarnation is. Right? You never truly die, because you know, it's just that infinite flow of life continuously manifesting itself in different creations, from plants to animals to people. That's why when you, and people are the pinnacle of that, you know, the universal awareness experience in itself. And when we look at that too, you know, that's why in our DNA, right, which is our genetic code, or, you know, our binary code, whatever, right, we see that we have everything. We have every molecule here on earth within us. We have every plant, every animal, everything. It's because we are God, right? We are, you know. And you may be at the top of the food chain this time, but you may not next time. I mean, I don't know exactly how it works, but neither do you. So it's really all speculation. And when we look at religions, you know, what you see over and over and over, you know, is the one thing is like the love principle, right? And the frequency of the earth, you know, is synonymous with the frequency of love, you know. And a lot of people, especially in like these new age movements, they want to kind of like push, you know, the whole love thing on people. And, you know, but when we look in like the Bible and all these religious books and religious texts, you know, one thing that we do see, and I love this, and I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day, is that God never gives us a reason for why he loves us, right? Why is that? You know, why is that? If you've ever really thought about it, I mean, really get your brain cooking around that. Why has God never gave a reason for loving us? It's because it's unconditional love, right? So if he gave a reason of why he loved us, then that would be a condition. You know, see, we have conditions, right? You know, even as much as like I love my girlfriend, I have conditions, right? If she cheated on me tomorrow, you know, I may still love her, but I wouldn't be with her, right? Like things like that, you know, vice versa. If I'd done something atrocious to her, right, whether she loved me or not, that love would end eventually, right? It would die out, you know. But God's not like that. No matter what you do, you know, that is the ultimate loving principle. You know, and the only thing more powerful, actually, on a frequency level than love is authenticity. Is authenticity, you know? And I think that says a lot, you know, to like just us, you know, and like speaking to like being who we truly are, you know, and like people always try to shame you if you're not conforming to the same principles or whatever ideas that they are, you know, conforming to, right? But that wouldn't be true and authentic to me if I was like you, you know, if I did what you did, thought how you thought, I wouldn't be me, you know. And and I think a lot of us, we do that because we want to be accepted, right? We're taught that from a you know, in our adolescent age, you know, we're bullied in school and shit like that for being different, you know, and we basically have the authenticity beat out of us by society, you know, and we're no longer brave, you know, we're like no longer willing to be different, you know, daring to be different. We're no longer willing to be eccentric. We're no longer willing to be true to who we are as people, you know. And as others shame us, we begin to shame ourselves. You know, we stop loving ourselves for who we are too. You know, we even might begin to resent or hate ourselves, you know, for who we are. And self-hatred is it's a terrible fucking thing, you know. It really is. Because once we begin to do that, man, you know, it opens the door for a lot of things, you know. Whether that's like addictions and just all different types of indulgences. It's because we have a hole in our soul, right? You know, we need to fulfill something within ourselves, and I think every one of us can kind of relate to that in some way, shape, or form. You know, I don't know. Maybe you're like super enlightened, and I just don't know it. But I haven't reached that point yet to where it's like I just have reached perfection. I don't know if that happens in this life. You know, and think about, you know, this universal spirit that has it's infinite probabilities experiencing itself. So think about this, right? In order for it to learn all things, right? And to like experience all realities, all probabilities, all everything, right? It goes under the illusion of separation, you know, and it comes in the form of us, you know, where we have this, you know, ignorance is bliss, this blissful experience of, you know, remembering, right? Which is, and think about the word remembering. Remember, etymology is like the key to understanding, right? When we remember, we're putting the body, right? The members of the body back together, right? We're remembering. You know, it's like, you know, how amazing is that? You know, how cool is that? To just even think that we get to be a part of something like this, to even think that we get to have this experience, you know, and I think a lot of times we lose sight of that, you know, and we get caught up in all the bullshit, you know, of the things like, you know, the different religions and all of that. You know, and if you think about what demons are, right? I am legion, right? Legion. Just saying, you know. It's like we get this amazing experience of just like to be an individual, or think we are, you know. And, you know, the world is literally a stage. So we get to play the part we want to play. We choose the role that we play every day. By what we accept, what we reject, you know, as our reality. The labels we accept as our identity, you know, all of these things. These play into, you know, what role we play on the world stage. And we can be as big or as little as we want to be. We can be as important or as insignificant as we want to be. You know, and there's no right or wrong to it. It's like what works for you and what makes you happy at the end of the day. That's what's gonna, you know, be the best, bring the most fulfillment to you. At least in my opinion. You know, I don't know anything. And I think that is the beginning of understanding, is knowing that we know nothing, right? Because we do. Like, none of us know shit. You know, none of us know shit. And what I actually believe, you know, we're just now coming into a new age or a new cycle of consciousness to where we're even beginning to scratch the surface on true knowledge and understanding. Remember, like, the Bible says that, you know, knowledge would increase, right? In the last days. And the last days don't mean the end of the fucking world, right? Revelation means revealing. Apocalypse means revealing, right? It's a revelation. It's a revealing. You know, so it's like everything that was once hidden from us, we can now see, right? If thine eye be single, then thy whole body be filled with light, right? It's the awakening of the spiritual eye, you know? And we're now tapping into that, being able to finally see the world for what it truly is, finally see one another for what it truly is. And when you begin to see that, you can no longer hate another person, right? Because it's like, you know, this is something that's been a hard fucking lesson for me, especially over the years. We can become incredibly condescending and shit and arrogant, especially in our knowledge. And you look at like the spiritual community, most people are, right? They'll talk about all of the people that aren't awake, and they'll call them sheeple and all these different derogatory terms, right? And it's pure arrogance. And it's like, we can't be upset with other people, because we have to understand, like, we can only meet people where they're at, right? Just like intelligence varies, consciousness varies, you know? Not everybody's got the same size spark, you know? We all have a spark, and not everybody has the same amount of awareness, you know? Not everybody's on the same, you know, we're not at the same place at the same time. So we can only meet people where they're at and understand that, you know, we can't hate other people for not understanding what we understand or not knowing what we know, because they, you know, they're limited by their awareness. They're limited by their consciousness. You know what I mean? As we are, right? As we are. It doesn't mean we can't grow. You know, I believe our spirit is just like a muscle, right? It's like our brains or our arms, right? Whatever. You know, it's like a muscle. The more that we use it, the more that we exercise it, the more that it expands, the bigger it gets, the stronger it gets, the more tapped in and tuned in we get. You know, I do believe that. You know, so just like our minds, just like our bodies, you know, the more we utilize that, you know. So, we can grow, we can strengthen spiritually, we truly can. You know, and spirit doesn't seek to, you know, to control, you know, to dominate others, to oppress others. You know, that's a whole nother thing. Okay. Well, I'm sure you got all the answers. Whoever you are. Here. Let me help you out. I just, you know, and I don't have time for that, you know. It's like, where I'm at in my life, like, I just could care less. Like, it's not a competition to me about how much I know compared to other people. I don't give a fuck, you know. And I think, you know, that's like, we've lost sight of it. Like, when we're walking around telling everybody, you know, nope, you've got it all wrong. It's like, we're all speculating. We're like, my perspective is the same as yours. We're all sitting on this fucking, you know, ball, or whether you think it's a pizza, a ball, or whatever, a donut, I don't give a fuck. You know, we're all sitting down here on earth, you know, with the same seat. You know, nobody's got a better seat in this house, you know. We're all watching the same movie called life. You know, and this is like what I think is really beautiful. You know, and this is what makes the illusion of division so powerful, is that even though we are all connected, and yes, we can tap into that universality where we experience ourselves and others, I can never actually put myself in your vehicle, though, right? So this is the cool part. I never, even though I can empathize, right? And I can empathize. I can imagine myself experiencing what you've experienced, right? I can imagine myself living through what you've lived through and empathize with that. And, you know, I can feel it from what it would be like for me. But I can never truly put myself in your body and in your shoes and in your experience and feel it like you feel it. right? So we do have that individual experience, and that's what makes it so cool. And that's why it's so hard for us to, especially when it comes with like spirituality and consciousness, for us to try to tell someone else, what their truth is, or what their, what they feel, believe, think, like, it's like trying to tell somebody like what something tastes like. It may taste good to you, but tastes like shit to me, It's like, it's impossible. It's impossible. And I think it's pure arrogance, like we see a lot of this, and it's like, and I talk about it a lot, especially like the New Age movement. I swear to God, guys, it's probably the shittiest fucking movement on the face of the earth right now. I'm sorry. And I use that label for just a lack of a better term, right? But it propagates, and it's like a distorted version of like spirituality, where they tell us like, they call it self-love, and it's really selfishness, right? When you see like, all of these great spiritual leaders over time, whether it's Jesus or Buddha or all these other, there's been a billion of them, right? Prophets and messiahs and all of this, right? When you see like their version of love and God's version of love and all of this, right? It's when you put others first, It's when you sacrifice others. It's not this perverse version that we're fed today in a lot of the conscious communities, where it's like, you love yourself first, right? Everyone else behind you. It's like the world's been doing that for forever, right? Like, the world has been selfish for forever. Like, and we're taught that this is like the true version of love, It's like, it could be further from the truth, You're not doing anything profound by putting yourself first. Every sack of shit political leader, every dictator, every motherfucker that you see on television, right? All of these people, that their universe is no bigger than themselves, do this, So you ain't being some high consciousness being by putting yourself first. That is bullshit. I hate to tell you, we, and a lot of us too, and I'm not going to say everybody, but, a lot of us, we don't understand that, like, we're meant to enlighten ourselves and better ourselves so we can be better for others. A lot of the things that you're given in your life, whether you're blessed with fucking money or whatever, talents, gifts, whatever, right? Whatever you're blessed with in your life, it's meant for you to have that abundance of talent or wealth or whatever, to be able to help others with it, We lose sight of that, It's like we have this idea of like, oh, well, the more we get, the more for us, we try to hoard everything, and that's what, it's created the society we live in today, where everybody's materialistic, and, their world is no bigger than them. They can't even conceive of anything outside of themselves. That's why, you needed something like COVID, or you needed something like a worldwide something to be able to awaken everybody, because you know what? They didn't give a fuck until it impacted them. And that's the truth. They could care less, until they were impacted in a first person way, right? Till someone they loved died, till their income was destroyed, till their freedom was taken, right? It wasn't an issue, right? But now that it's hit them personally, right, in some way, shape, form, or facet, now it's a problem, right? While we watch third world countries suffer and starve and all this, nobody gave a fuck. Nobody, right? We've seen revolutions going on for fucking decades and decades and decades, right? All over the world. We're oppressive governments and all this, and we ain't gave two shits. But once it happens to us, all of a sudden it's an issue, right? I mean, that's just the reality of things, And I'm not here to shame anybody or anything like that, it is what it is, right? And that's what we've seen. We've seen the world finally, You know, they finally decided to do something about all this shit because it finally hit them at home, right? You know, you seen your brother get destroyed and it didn't bother you none. You know, you seen them homeless and starving, didn't bother you none. You know, but once it hit you, all of a sudden it's like, it's some real shit now. It's like, okay, shit just got real. You know, shit just got real. Right. No, if not for the connections, what would be the point? Right. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I can tell you what too, just like, you know, I've made a lot of connections with people through, you know, this community and other ones. You know, I've got some pretty large followings on different social media platforms. But, you know, I cultivated a lot of, you know, good friendships and great people. I've met some of the best people in the world, you know, through, you know, these movements and these communities. You know, beautiful, beautiful people. You know, and it's almost like, it was like, I remember, especially when I first started getting into this stuff, it was like a culture shock for me. I guess really just because of like how I grew up, you know, like, it was a culture shock for me, you know, to see that many good people, selfless people that cared about others. It blew my mind, actually. It really did. It blew my fucking mind. It did. To see people that didn't know me from Adam, right? Like just a stranger, you know, be willing to help me, give their hard-earned money, give their time, their love, their energy, you know, just all of it. You know, it's like, fuck. You know, that's cool shit, man. It really is. You know, I've met a lot of people like that. I've had, you know, I've got to do a lot of traveling and shit. So I've got to been very blessed, you know, to have that experience. And I know that there are good people because of that, you know. So I've had my life enriched by others for sure. For sure. For sure. In a major way, you know. And people, you know, and it's like, no matter, you know, like how many people I, you know, had followed me or anything like that, I was always willing to learn, to be open to new ideas. And I learned so much from so many different people, you know. And it's like, if we look at ourselves, kind of like everybody is like, and I love like when we look in the Bible, you know, the cherubim, and how it's like this angelic being with eyes all over it, right? And I kind of look at us as like, you know, and we are the cherubim and seraphim, in my opinion. You know, that the fire being of the seraphim, right? You know, that's our inner fire, that spirit, right? But the cherubim, right, and having this covering and these eyes all over it, right? I think each one of us are one of those eyes, right? Like on the universal organism, you know? And it's like each one of us are like a node on the universal organism, like having our own individual perspective, you know? So it's like I have one perspective of like where I'm looking at everything from, you know? And I'm one eye. You know, I'm one eye, and then you're another one, right? But you're all the way over here, so your point of view is different. And then another one of you is down here, right? So your point of view is different. And then my girlfriend's over here, right? So her point of view is different. And then my brother's over here, right? Like so, you know, so on and so forth. We all have these different, you know, these different views or these different perspectives on, you know, what life is and what God is and, you know, all of it. It's just all got a different meaning to each one of us. And it's like, and if we're, you know, and if we're open, you know, and we like humble ourselves, and that's why humble thyself and be exalted, right? Or exalt yourself and be humbled, right? So it's like your fucking choice, right? Because pride goeth before destruction. But if you humble yourself, right, and you allow yourself to, you know, to hear, you know, what other people's opinion or, you know, their vision or view, you know, or perspective is on things, like you learn so much. And that's why, you know, the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron, right? And that's what each one of us are, you know. We're sharpening one another. We're gleaning, you know, different things from one another, you know. Not one person's going to have, you know, every answer or all of it figured out. Like, that's just impossible, you know. But each one of us, though, we all have something to, to offer, something to bring to the table. And I truly, genuinely believe that. I do. I think each one of us, we offer our own unique perspective on life. And not one is more valuable than the other, and God makes fools of the wise, right? And he confounds the wise, Right, you can learn a lot expectedly when you humble yourself. And let's learn something from a 10-year-old child. I learn shit from my kids all the time, so that's the truth, I do believe that children now, I've been a believer of this because I have 3 sons, which I'm very blessed to have that. But I do believe children now, they're just born with a deeper intuitive nature and understanding. And, you hear like from the mouth of babes and shit like that, right? That's a real deal thing, right? They haven't had that spirit beat out of them yet. Not all of them. I mean, some of them have. They've had very hard lives. And that's sad when that happens. It really is. It's fucking terrible to see that happen to a child, But the world kind of beats that out of us, right? As we become adults, we're taught to conform. We're taught to conform, and obey, And we're indoctrinated in so many different ways. But you don't see that in children. That's why they'll tell you, children will tell you the fucking truth, dude, right? Like, they don't care. They have no filter. They just are who they are. And notice their pure imagination, right? Why is that? Why is that? And I've said this, that imagination is God, and they're pure imagination, right? Children are pure imagination. Like, you cannot stifle a kid's imagination, right? That's all they do all day long, right? All day long, is imagine different things, because they're that in tune, they're that in tune. It's us that are not, and we try to impose our limiting beliefs and shit like that on them, like we're the ones who have the knowledge. It's crazy, when you really think about it. It's like you can learn a lot from a kid, because they haven't been taught to be ashamed of who they are, They haven't taught to limit their beliefs, their perceptions, their thoughts, their ideas, right? They live in imagination day in and day out, 24 hours a day. All of them come from a place of love in all that they do. They don't know race, color, sex. They don't know none of it, dude. They just play. And it's like we should be playing, And some of us are lucky enough to play our entire lives, And I feel like for me, that's been like a thing. Like I forgot to play, and that's happened to me. And I think it happens to a lot of us. Life gets so serious, whether it's like, politics, religion, or our families, or whatever, life gets serious and we forget to play, And I think that would be like a good challenge for each and every one of us to like maybe, even if it's just one day a week, make sure you're playing, or a little bit out of every day, make sure you're taking the time to play, and enjoying yourself and doing what you love. Even if you're not doing it for a living, do what you love. If you love to sing, make sure you're singing, as much as you want, as often as you want, If you always wanted to record an album, you know what? You know how fucking easy that is to do at home and do it yourself? Do it. If you wanted to start a YouTube channel, whatever it is you want to do, I would strongly encourage people to do that. And I feel like recently, I've had, I don't want to get into all my like details or anything like that, but, recently just like getting sick and the whole bladder cancer and all that shit, like it's been like a reminder, it's like I feel like God like speaking to me, incredibly loud, like, hey, remember your purpose, remember who you are, and I think that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And he speaks to me in my voice. He'll speak to you in your voice, I'm sure of it. you know, or whatever voice you choose to hear it in, you know. Yeah, well, I mean, attitudes, right? Attitudes are infectious, right? Attitudes are infectious. So it's like, you know, you see somebody having a shit attitude at a job or something, right? Being negative, you know, gossiping about people, right? It creates like a atmosphere of that, right? Like where other people are, you know, negative and they talk bad about people and stuff like that. Well, the same thing, you know, like you're saying, be jolly, right? A jolly soul is infectious. Yeah, it absolutely is, you know, because, you know, when we have like that passion, like people want to be passionate too. When they see passion, they feel passion, right? It like ignites passion in them, you know? And we lose that. We lose that in our fucking relationships, you know? And it was, you know, I was talking to my girlfriend about this, like it's not worth it, right? Like, how you see lots of relationships that like the love goes cold in them because people hold on to resentments, you know. And this don't have to be just, you know, love relationships or marriages. And this can be all types of relationships, brothers and sisters, best friends. People fall out, you know, and they fall out for a variety of reasons, you know, but usually those reasons are because they have resentments against one another. And once we begin to resent each other, right, the love goes cold. You know, it does. You know, whether, and think about this, and I want you to think about every like failed relationship you've had, you know, every failed relationship you've had, and I want you to think about it, you know, what actually happened there, you know, I mean, really think about it, you know, whether they did you wrong in some way or you did them wrong, it created some sort of resentments, right? And those resentments actually, you know, ended up deteriorating, right? The love, the passion, right? The way that you've seen the person, the respect for the person or whatever, right? And once we begin to stop respecting people and we stop loving people and all that, right? Like that's kind of the beginning of the end. You know, we can tolerate people for a long time, you know, but just because we're tolerating somebody doesn't mean we're actively, you know, loving them or having passion for them and shit like that. And we stop expressing it. You know, we stop expressing that passion, that love, whether it's in a love relationship and, you know, the sex goes away, right? Because sex is, you know, I believe, you know, even though it's the act of like reproduction and giving life, it's really like that act of like love in itself being physically expressed, you know, the joining of two people, you know, the two becoming one physically, you know, but it's a union of souls also. And I've talked about this, you know, and depending on, and I don't care what your orientation is, it doesn't matter to me actually, but that masculine, you know, what it does is imprints on that feminine, right? That's the act of like reproduction, you know, we imprint. You know, that's why a female, she holds the DNA, right, of every male she's ever been with. And she holds the genetics of her children for the rest of her life, right? Because she's like a canvas, you know, a blank canvas, if you will, you know. And the male is that phallic, like a stylus, right? You know, and we're like writing on them spiritually, you know, and we're commingling our spirit, you know, when we do that. You know, and it's like this beautiful act that takes place, but we stop really having that desire, you know, for one another when we start holding resentments, right? We stop having passion, and passion doesn't have to always take place that way. You know, it can take place a variety of ways, you know, but that's just one example, you know, and we see a lot of that, you know, happen where the love, the compassion, and all that disappears, you know, from our relationships and from our connections because we hold resentments towards each other. You know, that can, and the more we do that too, and if you think about that, you know, the more that we do that, the more we justify, you know, and you've heard of like the evil eye, right? This is like the beginning of that, really. You know, the evil eye, all it actually is, and this is why certain cultures, and I know the Greeks do it, and other cultures, but I know for a fact the Greeks do, the first 40 days that a child is born, they don't allow anyone outside of the immediate family to see the child because of the evil eye. They don't believe that it's developed a spiritual aura enough to defend itself from the evil eye, right? And the evil eye comes from any form of resentment, jealousy, envy, any of those things that a person may have towards another, right? So if you're watching me right now and you're like, I hate this motherfucker, I cannot stand him, he's an arrogant, condescending shit, then you are sending me the evil eye, my friend. And that's just a fact, right? So anytime you're thinking negative thoughts towards another person, you're wishing bad, you're jealous, you're envious, you're coveting what they have, that is a variation of the evil eye, right? So that's why you see a lot of people wear like different protection amulets and shit like that, because you never know, man. People are putting bad juju on people all the time. Some people just live that type of life, and it's like, you've ever met one of those people where they're just pure fucking negativity, right? Like, they don't like nobody, they don't like nothing. They're just jealous of everyone. They're always hating on everybody for what, you know what I mean? It's like, there are just some people that are just like that. They can never be happy for other people and their successes or, anything like that, You even see this develop in fucking relationships and marriages and partnerships, right? Where it becomes like competitive and shit. You ever been in one of those relationships where it starts to become competitive between the two people? That's not good, You're doing, this is like the person you love more than anything in the world, and you're sending them the evil eye every fucking day because you resent them for different reasons, It's like, and I feel like it's always after we lose somebody, whether we lose them to death or illness, or they divorce us or break up with us or whatever, right? But after they're out of our lives, that's when we get all fucking nostalgic, right? And we begin to, have this, we appreciate them again, That's why a lot of times you'll see people like glorify exes and shit like that. It ain't because the ex was actually any good, even most of the time. Most of the time, they weren't shit, It was like actually what you thought it was when you were with them. Like, if you thought they were lying, cheating shit, they probably were. But after they're gone, because you have that hindsight and they're no longer in your peripheral vision, right? And they're no longer right there for you to resent. Then you start looking back and your brain, because it represses, so our brain is like the way it's designed, it's like we're designed to release negativity. So a lot of times, whether it's traumatizing events or shit like that, or just bad memories of an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, right? You don't remember all the bad shit. You just remember the good highlights, and you got this good highlight reel of this person that was actually terrible to you and you were miserable with, but you've got that nostalgia, and now you're like, oh, I miss them, just hit them back up and shit like that. You get back with them and it don't work again. It's like, that's why you created that highlight reel, because your brain is designed to get rid of negativity, right? We're designed to forget the bad, because if we hold on to that, it'll just eat us alive, Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree with that. A lot of people who do have everything money-wise don't have a lot of God in them. Some people do. Some people, and I don't want to say, like, there's a blanket for everybody, but to your comment there, some people who are very wealthy are incredibly spiritual, and they're just incredibly blessed, and they use their wealth and money and finances and all that to help people and to give, and, and that's why they have all that abundance and blessing. But yeah, you're right. A lot of people that attain wealth, you can't be a good businessman a lot of times and be a good person, That's why you see like a lot of these corporations and shit like that, they do incredibly shrewd dealings, right? And shit on their employees, and everything's designed to, to one up everybody that's serving them, to make, to serve the bottom line, right? Because, And I'm not to say that like every business is like that. They're not. There's a lot of great business owners, that do their employees wonderful. They take great care of them and they appreciate the shit out of them. They're grateful for the service and the work that that employee gives to them, or all of them. But then you do see like a lot of the real super huge ones, that to serve the bottom line, they fuck a lot of people over. So we do see that. It's almost like you can't be a great person and be a great business person, but I mean, I think you can. I think that's just one of those those false the paradigms that we're taught. We're like taught that you can't be successful in business and be a good, loving person. I think it's just a lie. It's just a lie. We create the reality that we want. So it's up to us at the end of the day. We decide, what our lives are like. We decide. If we believe we're infinitely abundant, and if we believe that, all of our needs will be taken care of, I believe they will. I do. I believe they will. I mean, of course, we have to add action into the mix and all of that. I mean, it just don't happen just by sitting and, wishing on a star type shit. But, we gotta add all the elements, imagination and action and all of it. If we're acting, and to me, that is a true mark of faith, right? Like, if we're taking action, it's because we believe so much, we're willing to put our energy into it, It's like you believe in an idea or a principle to such an extent that you're willing to like put your money where your mouth is. You're willing to like put your hard, your sweat and energy into something. Like, you really have faith in it, you believe in an idea that much, you're willing to actually, put it into the physical world. So, at least that's just my opinion, but everything starts as a thought. Everything starts as imagination. Hearing your 10-year-old daughter say that it's the best day of her life ever several times lately oh, that's beautiful. I love that. That's so cool. That is so cool. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, our kids are like some of the most, at least mine, inspire the shit out of me, for real. My 8-year-old son thinks I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I can do no wrong in my children's eyes. And that's been a big thing for me because I'm such a hermit. I mean, I am a Virgo, so I mean, I guess I'm a hermit by nature, right? And I'm a role model hermit too. So, but, I'm such a hermit though. My children have been like a huge thing of like strength for me just over the years. No matter how down on myself I get, no matter what I go through, they're just super, super inspiring because, they've always just seen me as dad, and, like I can, no matter how much of a fuck up I am to society, like I'm not to them, and sadly, we judge ourselves based on like our social status, right? The social hierarchy, how much money we make, what kind of car we drive, our home, our marital status, just different things like that, the shit that we accumulate, which, none of that shit really means anything at the end of the day. That does not, the amount of shit you have doesn't, has nothing to do with your character, some of the wealthiest people in the world have the worst character, in the world, so people that mine fucking cobalt and enslave Africans and shit are incredibly wealthy. Do you think they're good people? They're terrible human beings, doing that to children and everything. So, I mean, and a lot of people that have like these incredibly, we've seen like the whole pedophilia and child trafficking shit. That's like, that comes from somebody having such a huge fucking appetite, that they're bored with just, the norm, bored with just the norm. So they got to do some really wild out there shit, to excite them, and of course that, that's a very sick spirit anyways. It's a very sick spirit to get into a state like that, to where you're like willing to harm children and shit like that for excitement. I mean, that goes into a ritualistic, nature. It's got a ritualistic side to it. So there is that. And I've covered the book. It's got a few different names, but it's the Grand Clavicle of Solomon. It's a Luciferian text. You know, I mean, it's got the name of a Luciferian text. I don't think it's actually Luciferian. But there are rituals, and within that, that talks about taking the skin of a fucking a child and putting it in a circle and all kinds of weird shit. So I mean, there are some pretty out there forms of magical practices that do some pretty out there things. And I mean, anybody that's watched this channel for a long time and some of my other channels and work and shit like that, like I've covered some wacky shit over the years, some really, really hardcore shit. And like people that are like members of the Patreon and all that, like, I do have a lot of those videos on BitChute and shit still. You can check those out if you want. But, with the whole organ harvesting and human trafficking, and that is a gnarly rabbit hole to go down. It really is. It's gnarly. And you see, like, the people behind that, these are just the worst scumbags, like, ever created. Ever. Ever. So, and they do, it's like, whew, like how you could do that to a person, I don't even know what type of evil, you gotta be a really broken person. That's all I can say. Because you gotta think, like, anybody that's doing shit like that, they're a broken ass person. There's something really wrong with you. You've been through a lot of fucked up things, but it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. There's no excusing that. A lot of people, they go either way. When bad things happen to them, they either they experience that level of evil and darkness. They experience that level of evil and darkness, and it gives them like this empathy, this understanding for that, and they don't, they're capable of great darkness and evil, but I think it was like Jordan Peterson I was like watching, and he was talking about how that's like the true, virtue is like having the ability to harm others, having the ability and to be capable of great evil and terrible things, and withholding that, not doing that, right? That's true virtue. Like, if you're not capable, you're just weak, right? You're just weak, you're just a coward because you can't do it. That's why you pretend to be Mr. Nice Guy, because you're not capable of being anything other than that. So you act like it's nice as a virtue, but there's really no virtue in it. You're just weak, right? But it's those that are capable of that, and people don't fuck with them because they know they can, they sense that they're capable of that, but they don't do it. That's the true meaning of virtue, is having the ability, but not doing it. And it's like he who wrestles with God, right? That ability to be good or evil. I was talking to my girl about every person that's capable of amazing good, they have that inverse side of them. They're capable of amazing evil also. Like we all have that dualistic nature to where we can do both. And like I was saying, like, people either go one of two ways. When they're experienced incredible traumas and terrible things in their life, they either have this amazing empathy and understanding of pain and darkness, right? Because they've experienced it firsthand, and they don't want to impose that on another person ever, right? They understand it and the real damage it does, and the harm, and like they have compassion and empathy, and they never do that to another person. They'll defend others, like they become defenders against that almost, right? They help others. They bring healing into the world because of that. And then you have those that go the opposite direction, right? They become the proverbial kid with the magnifying glass, right? It's like, I understand how to do this, and because I was hurt, I'm going to hurt you worse, right? And this is a lot of times in relationships, the whole narcissist empath paradigm, and they say as much of, the codependent as you are will be as much of the narcissist that you'll attract, right? So it's always that balance, that polarity. So as much of the narcissist as you are, as much as the codependent you'll attract, right? So it's like only when we find that balance, and we all have both sides within us, everybody does, you know, but that codependent nature attracts that narcissist, right? You know, and, you know, that equal opposing force, you know, and we see them, you know, feed off of those people, you know, and a lot of time, when we experience things in a relationship, whether it's a person that like cheats on us, abuses us, or, you know, they're emotionally unavailable, what the fuck ever, right? They're manipulative, they're liars, let's just, you know, whatever, right? Just insert whatever. It's because they're actually showing you, they're displaying to you what others have done to them. You know, they've experienced that from another person, so now they become the very thing that was done to them. It sucks. You know, it does. It sucks. So it's like, that's their defense mechanism, is like, oh, well, you know, I was cheated on, so now I better cheat on others before it happens to me, right? I was abused in my life, so now I abuse others, you know, so it don't happen to me. It's like, you know, it's like a good offense is a good, you know, the best defense is offense, right? And it's almost like that mentality, you know, which is sad. It is sad. It sucks. But, you know, and that's where self-love actually does come in, you know, it does. You know, we can love people. Sometimes we can't love them through certain shit, though. You know, sometimes they need the experience of, like, losing things that matter to them and shit like that. You know, so we don't need to play God for nobody, you know, but we also, I never believe somebody should just allow themselves to get abused, you know, ever. So I am going to wrap this one up. I do appreciate all of you guys for joining me. It's been amazing. I loved doing it. So if you would like to donate support to the channel, you can do so. PayPal.me, The Best Damn Podcast, Cash App, Best Damn Podcast, or join me on Patreon, patreon.com, Best Damn Podcast Official, or Facebook Messenger Pay, facebook.com, John Keane, Best Damn Podcast. Follow me, Instagram, Best Damn Podcast, Twitter or X, The Real Best Damn, and Facebook, Best Damn Podcast. All the links are in the description. I also put them in the chat way back at the beginning. If you'd like to book a personal tarot reading, text 513-393-2396 or email therealbestdampodcast@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please hit the like if you're in the chat. Share this link. Get it out there for me. That's the best way to help me out. And subscribe and click all on the notification bell. And I'll probably be posting this on all the other platforms. So no matter what platform you're watching, make sure to follow, like. And I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. And I will see you next time. You'll have an awesome, awesome week. Thank you guys. I love you. And I appreciate all the prayers and all that. So like you said, I've been dealing with some real health issues, so just pray for me and all that good stuff. The power of prayer is just insane. So I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Peace.